we were just talking about some of the things that we used to do when we were kids growing up, and some of us were in the Bronx, some of us were here in California, and there were some stories about growing up with family, growing up with kids on the street, putting on plays, feeling tremendously connected. And I know when I compare that to when I was growing up, I grew up in a suburb that was really quiet, and I felt like I was kind of by myself growing up. I didn't have brothers and sisters, and there's just kind of me and the TV a lot of the times. We did fun things, so I don't want to give it too bad of a rap. But nevertheless, the subject of isolation came up, and that's something that I've wanted to explore for a little while. So to begin with, I want to introduce our friends here. We have Audrey, who's from Brooklyn. Say hello.
The Bronx, hello.
And we're here with Max, a longtime friend of mine as well, and his beautiful girlfriend, Laura.
Hi.
So, let me ask you guys something to start with. What is the feeling of isolation? When you actually meditate on that feeling, what is it that you experience? What is isolation? We all know it, we've all had experiences with it. But what does it feel like to feel isolated?
I was saying a couple of weeks ago to somebody that I felt lately very disconnected. Not connected to anything.
Okay. So isolated is to be like completely walled off from other people, for like, but even on an emotional level, not to have a sense of camaraderie or bonding or anything like that. Yeah.
To go to college, I started to slip kind of into a depression, and that resulted, I think, from a feeling of isolation, where I didn't know as many people, didn't have the emotional connection that I did with family and friends here. So, yeah, I think apathy developed then a sense of not caring as much for what was going on around me, and I stopped trying to make those connections.
Right.
Because of that depression, those suppressed feelings that followed from that.
Right. So the apathy is just kind of a lack of energy, a lack of inspiration, just total disinterest, some sort of like feeling drained all the time, for example, something like that.
Yeah, I didn't feel anyone who really cared about me in that environment.
Yeah.
So I sort of shut down and conserved my energy.
Totally. And anything for you, Max, come to mind with regard to what does it feel like to feel isolated?
I would say like wanting others' presence there, but not wanting them for the sake of interaction, not wanting them to not wanting to spend time with you because you're an interesting person, but just so somebody can like fill that spot, like fill that chair.
Right.
And
totally. And why do you want them to fill that chair?
Because there's like an emptiness that you feel. Like when you feel like you're disconnected from other people, then you need that. There's like a substance, like you were saying before. Like even studies with like monkeys show that like humans need interaction, and animals need interaction. You need compassion.
We're social beings.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you could be in a crowded room and still be isolated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm really curious about. I mean, one question is it true that every time you're alone you feel isolated? When we're meditating, we're alone. Do we feel isolated when we're meditating? From your experience, Laura?
No, it's a state of openness.
Right.
Well, I think of when I write. I'm at my happiest, and I'm alone outside, sitting in a cafe or something. And, in fact, if someone wants to sit down with me, sometimes I don't want them to,
right.
because
I've experienced that too. And on the other side of that, you mentioned briefly, you can be in like at a rave and feel totally isolated, where there's thousands of people around you.
Yeah.
And you can be just like a simple little social gathering, but say like something happened that's really weighing on you and you feel totally isolated. So it seems like the real question is, what is it that makes us feel isolated? You know what I'm saying? What is it that makes us feel alone, apathetic, empty? If it's not being physically isolated. It's something psychological. And what is that?
To me, I'm just be brief because I don't want to do a
Yeah, no.
Well, it's just like, to me, it's like being involved in exterior stuff versus inside your essence, your being, like I said, with the writing or anything else you do that brings you to that place.
Change from outside can affect how you feel inside. So whether you're in a new situation with new people who you're not familiar with, you're uncomfortable, or a new place, you go to another culture and you're not sure how to interact. I think those kind of situations make us feel alone because we're not seeing people like ourselves or situations that are comfortable or familiar to us.
I think that's definitely a factor too. But I mean, that's like another challenge. But at the same time, we've probably all experienced from time to time like an excitement about meeting new people too. You know, or like a kind of like remember when we were kids, or how dogs are with each other, how kids are. Sometimes they're like excited to play together and things like that, you know? So I think what we're looking for is a factor that we glean from maybe culture over time that makes us not be like kids anymore, that makes us maybe afraid of each other, that something that is like a little thorn in our side so that we can't be how we once were. When we jump out on the playground for the first time.
Start censoring yourself.
We start censoring ourselves. But nevertheless, you know, we do struggle feeling isolated now. We have grown up and we've had all these experiences, and maybe we've been kind of attacked by people or whatever it is that kind of shuts us down and makes us apprehensive. And so what I wonder is, what does it take now to feel connected all the time? What does it take now as grown people who have this natural disposition to be a little apprehensive in a social environment for the first time? And you know, when I reflect on my own experience, when I go to work, the time I have is completely dependent on the motivation or the intention with which I enter work. If I'm going to work to like make a little money and get out of there, and I'm just thinking about myself and my own needs, I've noticed clear as day that I feel lonely at work, I feel frustrated, I feel kind of isolated from the world. But why is that? It's because with my own mind I've isolated myself from the world. I've walled myself in my own concerns, in my own life. And the flip side of that is when I go to work with the explicit intention to fuel other people, to be like a whirling dervish and go around and compliment people on their new haircuts and have fun. And I've experimented with this with a lot at my job, is that I go there with the intention to like just forget about myself, to put other people into my mind, to think about them, to come up with little strategies and little plans to make their day go better. It's like a little kid, in a sense, that I'm like coming up with all these little schemes and thinking of people and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And I feel amazing at work just cleaning tables, you know, in a restaurant. I feel tremendously connected, and it's like the opposite of that feeling of isolation.